If you want a consistent strategy to get your railway extraction to under 120 turns, make sure you listen up because I'll show you guys how you can do that in this video. Make sure you watch until the very end because I'll be giving you guys something that will help with everyone's run. First, let's take a look at the team. The team that I use is right here. The two most important units of this team is W Don Quixote and R Heathcliff. These two in tandem can cheese out a lot of bosses and make it so that you can speedrun a lot of fights. However, if you don't have either of these characters, I would recommend you guys make friends with someone who has at least a W Corp Don Quixote with a Telepole ego. And if you already have Don Quixote, friend someone with an R Heathcliff. However, if you can only pick one or the two, make sure you friend someone with Don Quixote because that's going to be very important for your run. The second character that you would use ideally is a high DPS dealer, either 2-star Ryoshu, 2-star Shi Ishmael, this version right here, but up tier 3. So you want to at least have a high damage character as well as your Don Quixote here. Next, you want to have egos that are AoE. So ideally, you want to have characters such as Otis, either her 3-star variant or her 2-star variant with Blade Lineage or G Corp. Reason being is AoE egos such as Ebony Stem, Faustus Fluid Sac, Gregor's Ledgerment, those are all egos that are going to be very, very useful for you guys to use in your boss fights because some boss battles definitely make it faster by having AoE egos. Now, the two other units that I have that are benched are Rodion. Rodion is benched for her passive. Her Gambler basically says if you have 5 Wrath owned, one ally with the highest HP deals 20% more damage with head coins. Very, very important, actually. Head, there you go. With the highest damage deals 20% with the heads coins. And then we also have this person right here, Marakai Sinclair, his passive. It says 4 owned Gloom, one ally with the highest SP deals 10% more damage to enemies with the lowest HP. Very useful to be able to do a ton of damage to the bosses if you can get these passives set up. Now, with that being said though, I would say if this is your team, great. But if you don't have any of these characters, I'll show you the budget option really quickly. The budget option for this team is use the Lobotomy Faust. We're going to use 7 Section Sinclair. We're just going to use Base Salt. We'll use 2-star Hong Lu. We'll use N Corp Hammer. We'll use Shi Ishmael. We'll use G Corp Head Manager Otis. And we'll use let's just go with Base Gregor. And this in itself can already be a team that will get you through a large portion of it. And if you guys want, let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do a free to play team basically using only 2-star units to show that you guys can get also sub 120 with non 3-star characters. Now, with that being said though, let's just hop right into each of the battles and I'll give you guys the strategies that I use during my run. First stage. Start by cycling through your bad skills first. Cycling is a thing where you hover over your defense, and by triggering your defense, even though you don't use your defense skill that turn, if you use the skill on top of your defense, it gets rid of that bottom row of skill for you. So that means you can cycle through your skill 2 and skill 3 faster. The strategy for this is you want to be able to get these guys to around 50% HP before you burst them down. The reason being is these guys have a passive where if they're below 50% HP, they'll start to heal. And the heal is not that much, but it's annoying enough to the point where you want to be able to burst them down. As you can see, I was able to get these guys down relatively quickly. By turn 3, I was able to get rid of 2 guys, and relatively speaking, that's basically what you do for the majority of this fight. As you can see, I was able to get to the next wave by turn 5, and I was able to take out these guys all the way down to the last 2 guys by turn 7. However, I wasn't able to kill it on turn 7 and there's still 1 guy lingering, so unfortunately I just spent an extra turn doing this. I could have technically gotten it a turn or 2 faster, but that's how it was. Now, with the second stage with the Mexicans guys, AoE is the key to victory. Don't hoard your resources and make sure you use your ego. As you can see, by the end of turn 1, I was able to kill 2 dudes and the enemies were basically already dead. I was able to get to second phase with turn 2, and as you can see, I used another AoE, Ebony Stem. Ebony Stem does really good damage, and by the end of it, you can already see by turn 4, only 2 guys remain. This stage, relatively easily, you can basically pummel them out really quickly. Just make sure you don't greed out on your ego and use your AoE ego. Now, the bane of existence, the Froggo. Not much to be said about the doggo, or not the doggo, the Froggo, but mess up a single eye. The frog doesn't actually do damage, it does SP damage. Basically, the strategy is stagger one of the eyeballs, and when it's staggered, just throw everything into the staggered eyeball. The eyeball takes forever to unstagger, so just throw all your damage into that empty eye socket until basically the boss is dead. As you can see, it took me essentially 7 turns to get the boss down, but 7 turn, not bad, pretty good. Now, on the next stage, these guys, pretty self-explanatory. Treat it as if it was the second stage, and burst these guys out as fast as you can with your egos. I recommend using your AoE egos as well as just throwing as much damage as you can. By turn 7 was when I was able to get to the last stage, and it took me a few more turns to finish off. Relatively simple and easy fight. I could have shaved more off of it, but whatever. Wolf though, the strategy is actually simple too. Stagger the head and then burst it out as hard as you can. So hit the head, burst out the head, throw all your damage in the head, and Wolf is pretty easy. As you can see, by turn 3, the Wolf is almost dead. So that's basically the strategy. Stagger the head, throw all your damage into the head, easy win. This battle though, W Don Quixote shines the most. Have her evade the boss, so that way she will evade every single skill. Turn 2, have her evade again, but use a skill to clash with them. Turn 3, same thing. Get her to evade one of the skill and then use your 2 other skills to attack the enemy. This way she can do a ton of damage by herself. Reason being is when you get to this part where the enemy uses the grip move, just make it so that you can clash with the boss. The boss will either make it so it's unclashable and will immediately grip, and if that's the case, dodge. However, if you have the option to clash with the boss, just use your ego, clash the boss down, and you'll be able to get through the grip phase. Once you get to the grip phase, the boss is going to show its heart. Don't hit the heart. Avoid hitting the heart, hit the body, kill the boss. The heart weak point is a bait, different health pools. Now, Headless Inquisitors, big headless fish. This one, actually pretty easy fight. The boss has 5 body parts, so what you want to do is use your AoE ego to hit the boss. The AoE egos that hit 3 slots, 5 slots do 3 instances of damage and 5 instances of damage. As you can see, by 2 turns, the boss is basically almost already dead by having taken so much damage from AoE egos. Just one more slap to it and yeah, that's basically fish down. Turn 3 and yeah, fish is already down. What was the Bane and Mirror dungeon was super easy in these dungeons. But yeah, this boss, relatively easy. AoE ego for the win. Now this stage was a little bit rough. This stage, unfortunately, there wasn't really a good solid strategy because these guys are so freaking tanky. But ideally what you want to do is you want to focus down one of the small guys. So the people with only 1 skill slot, you want to burst one of the guys out, and then what you want to do is during the turn where the enemy is defending the big guy, have Mersault use his Jane ego to make sure you debuff the enemy, because what happens is the boss on this turn will counter attack, but you want to still hit the boss to make sure that these guys don't have their instincts up. A mechanic about this boss is that if you don't deal damage to the enemy, the boss gains an instinct, and the more instincts they have, the more damage you do. So ideally the strategy is make sure each of these enemies take a tick of damage per turn, and focus on one of the characters. Focus on the weaker characters and rinse and repeat the strategy. When the boss goes into its counter stage, where it can copy one of your moves that it is attacked with, just use Mersault's Chain Ego and put the guy in jail. By using that, enemy next turn won't be able to clash with you easily, and they also will have less potential to do more damage. And this fight here was a bit of a slog. I'm pretty sure you could solo this boss the same way as you use Don Quixote to solo the other boss, and that could shave off a lot of turns, so there's still definitely room for optimization, but that's just how I did this fight. Took out the small guys first while making sure I did a tick of damage to all the other guys. Used Mersault's chain skill whenever the enemy was countering, so that way, number one, Mersault wouldn't die, and number two, the enemy would be debuffed for next turn. These guys are a little bit annoying. So how this stage works is if the enemy gets to 50% or less, they start to heal a lot. So the rule of thumb is this one: use AoE and use slash. These guys are weak to AoE and slash damage, and as you can see, by turn 5 I was able to get rid of those guys, and by turn 7 I was able to get to these guys. The strategy to kill these guys is to make sure your Heathcliff uses body sack first turn, and then second turn, as you can see, that boss is at 50% HP. Use quick suppression to do as much damage as you can while the boss is bursted out, and then throw as much damage as humanly possible into that guy once he's at 50% HP. The 6 fragile will allow you to be able to do extra damage to the enemy, so the combo to get rid of these guys is use body sack to make it so that Heathcliff is at 6+ speed, so that way his quick suppression will do extra damage, and then once there's one guy left, just unga bunga do as much damage as you can and hope that you'll get quick suppression again, and that way you can burst out the enemy. It still takes some time, but there is definitely room for optimization. The Snakey boy with the dogs, to be honest, this one, there is no real good strategy. Reason being is this: right now, the boss, I would say, it's super tanky. I would say this is in one of those stages where, technically speaking, you could probably use Don Quixote and solo the stage and do the same thing you did with the robot, but I haven't tried that out yet. With my strategy that I did here, all I did was I kind of just spread out all my damage and clashed with all the enemies. There is technically a gimmick where the snake boss says that if one of the arm is broken, it will fully regenerate to match the HP of the other arm. The only thing is that I believe it's technically bugged, because during a few of my runs, even though I bursted out one of the arms, it never regenerated, which was very strange. But typically speaking, the strategy is whenever these dogs get fragile, burst out the dogs as much as possible, and once one dog is down, do the same thing to the other. So essentially, clash with the enemy. You can still take the hits from the snake guy as long as you're not taking debuffs such as paralyze and attack down, but overall you can take some hits. So the strategy is, once the dog gets fragile, kill one dog down. Then the next strategy is kill the other dog, get that dog out of the way, and once both dogs have been essentially put down, then you can start focusing on the snake. The snake, however, does start to give poison once you break the arms, and when that happens, you'll start to take a lot of damage eventually. But if you have already set up your team fast enough, you can essentially burst out the boss before you can take a ton of damage. So, boss down. Now, this one is actually very simple as well. Now, Headless Inquisitors, or this version, has 4 body parts, so treat it the same way as how you fought the previous Headless Inquisitors. Just use AoE and AoE down the body parts, because what ends up happening is, because there's 4 body parts, AoE egos hit the boss 4 times and do 4 instances of big damage. And once that happens, you'll see that the boss dies in 2-3 turns, and that is essentially Headless Inquisitors. And as you can see, Ledgermond, Honglu, Ebony Stem, all of these AoE egos do tons of damage to it. And Even though you can't really do enough damage, ideally you get it to the point where you also use Heathcliff's body sack, so that way when he gets to his next turn, he'll have suppression to be able to do as much damage as humanly possible. In this fight though, we get a little bit unlucky where a few of my characters get staggered, but not a big deal. Turn 2, we can still make this work. We use Faust's fluid sack. Turn 3, do as much damage as we can to it. And next thing you know, boss is essentially, basically, almost dead. Fast forward, we head on over to turn 4, because we need one more turn to kill it, unfortunately. And with that, Doggo and Headless Inquisitors down. So this was a 4-turn clear, pretty quick. Like the same thing with the dog in the previous fight, hit the head. Kroomer, there's not much to really say about Kroomer. She's much easier in this battle, and she doesn't have her heal passive. Essentially, how you beat Kroomer is in phase 1, clash with everything, make sure the enemy doesn't grip you, and easily phase 1 is complete. Phase 2, also quite simple. Phase 2, all you want to do is make sure you just break an arm. Focus one of the arms to stagger the arm, so that way once the arm is staggered, it will release its weak spot, which is the maw. Once the maw shows itself, just make sure you ego clash with all of this, or at least ensure that all your skills can clash and win, and that way the boss just takes a ton of damage. And once that happens, fight is pretty self-explanatory. Keep clashing with everything and easy fight. This final fight though, I would say the strategy is pretty self-explanatory. Try to make it or reset the fight until you get Heathcliff's S3, and ideally him going first. Because what will happen is if Heathcliff has his S3 turn 1, he can apply suppression to Ada. And here's the thing, the key is you aim for Ada. Honglu uses S3, does a ton of damage on Ada, but also inflicts the fragility. With the fragility debuff on Ada, you'll be able to do it so that you can kill this boss here very quickly. The gimmick of this fight is that the statue will constantly apply stacks of karma, 20 stacks with every skill. What ends up happening is you want to have to deflect those to the enemy. But with that being said though, there are skills like that where you just saw, where the boss will buff your teammates. So not every skill will attack you, and not every skill is harmful to you. With that being said though, I did try to burst out the enemy another time. So as you can see, the bug has 70 stacks of karma, so that means he's going to be taking 70% more damage. So I decided to see if I could really burst out the boss. Unfortunately, in this case, my Heathcliff actually doesn't have his skill 3 available, so I had to make do with body sack. I used body sack, I used representation emitter. Basically, I used as much damage as I could. The only thing I was missing was S3. If I had S3, I would have been able to do more damage. And what ends up happening is I punch as much damage into the boss, and I was barely able to get it to its stagger zone. And with Honglu, he throws his damage in, and essentially what ends up happening is I find out that the boss didn't die. And how much HP did Froggo still had? Well, Guido dies, which is great, but we take a look at the bug, 86 HP. So the boss killed freaking Guido, and Bug's back at full health. Unfortunate. So, rest of the fight, pretty self-explanatory. We keep clashing with the statue until it applies enough karma on the boss, because what happens is at 108 stacks of karma, a unit instantly dies. So this battle can take a little bit longer, but if you can burst out the bosses such as the bug and Ada, it'll be a lot faster. And with that, we were able to finish railway extractions, and we were able to do it in 95 turns. With that being said though, if you guys are all the way still at the end, I recommend you guys join my Discord community, because we talk about all things limbus. But not only that though, I have my friend code in there, so that way if you guys need a Don Quixote with a maxed out Telepole ego, you can get it there. So yeah, plug in at the very end of the video. As usual, I stream on Twitch Monday to Friday, and yeah, join my Discord community, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.